Welcome to the Unsidelined Life, the podcast that challenges and encourages women to stop denying themselves a full life and to step boldly into the opportunities God is preparing for you. Join me for raw insights and engaging conversations to guide your journey of self-discovery and pursue the life that God created for you. Welcome to the Unsidelined Life. This is Eileen Noyes, your host. All right, so I have gone through two of them already. I've called them the Mommy Mindset Makeover. Last one had to do more with stress of the holidays, but stress in general. So they were stress reducing mindset shifts. So this time around, I want to give context. I want you to enter my brain for a little bit. And if that was literal, oh my gosh, I think you guys would probably get way lost. Because especially now, like I said, birthdays and holidays, and I've got my speaker website that I've had to get all this, put all these things together so that it gets set up. The same thing for my demo reels for the speaking website. And I'm entering into the coaching space, which I've been in before, but I took a step back because really it comes down to this, which is kind of leading into this episode is, like I said, I've done coaching before. And when I paused and I reflected, like my mindset is this, always from a God perspective. God, I want to make sure I keep my priorities straight. I want to make sure I put you first. I want to make sure that I'm there for my husband, for my kids before I do anything. Yeah, that would be a cause of conflict or a shift in priorities. And there's always juggling. There's always going to be times, for example, if I'm writing and I'm on a deadline, there are times where I'll tell my kids, hey, during this time, like I'm honing in, like just be prepared. So as long as I keep them in the loop and those places of, like I call it buckets. So if I'm pouring water into that writing bucket, then there's got to be a time frame for that. And then buckets of water, pouring the water out of that bucket and pouring it back into the kids or to the husband, to the times that they need me. It's delicate. There's never going to be a true balance, but there's going to be healthy juggling, I guess you could say. So as I'm thinking about, like entering this coaching space, I was testing it out. I've come to this place and I tell people, I'd say, you know what? The only space I will give for coaching is that pro athlete wife space when the time is, like when God calls me to that. And so I always had a place for it. It's like, I can't add hours to my day. There's things that have shifted so that there's more time available. But, there's good and then there's best, or there's good in God's plan. So I can do a lot of good and I can get into different spaces where I'm helping people. And I always love that. At the same time, if that's not what I'm called to, then I have to say no. That's where the boundaries come in. That's where the priorities and the different things. And so in so many ways, I can totally feel God's prompting, like he's saying, it's time. It's time to start walking into what I called you to. I know that he's called me to write, which I'm doing, speaking, which I'm doing. So there's different spaces, but the coaching space is something that I'm now seeing more so like, all right, God, like I know you're calling me to this, and it's still a process. So I just wanted to speak specifically into that space. I will refer to my book, Sidelined No More, because here, this is where I get torn. I'm doing this like podcast. It's not just for pro athlete wives, but just like my book, I targeted and I was laser focused on speaking to them just because it would come sharp. The things I was talking about, it would be like, hey, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to relationships or, identity, transitioning out of the football, out of, pro sports. And so when I talked and I was laser focused on them, my message was more clear. And in that, as I'm talking to pro athlete wives, people that weren't at all in pro sports or, in the NFL, they totally resonated. So I want to do the same today. This came from, again, it's like, God's like stirring me into this coaching space. And in that, I am looking for, I want to make sure that I serve my who properly and with what they need. And so I am, or I was, the who I want to serve. Yeah, I was. I'm definitely not in that NFL space anymore. But I knew what I was in, like in the space of identity and transitioning out of having my own identity, my own purpose, having my job and all that stuff. And the shift out of that into coming into a whole new world of not of my choosing, in the sense of not, it's not like I selected my friends. It was like, here, so you're going to be plopped into Green Bay. You're going to be moving out of your situation, out of your church space, your family space, your work space, and you're going to be plopped into a frozen cold, well, it's called the frozen tundra. And your life is now going to be here. So your friends are going to come from this space. Your church is going to come from this space. So it wasn't something in my, it wasn't a choice in that. It was literally just leaving and then cleaving to my spouse. So here are the other things that kind of led me to why I'm, coming into this conversation on this podcast. So I told you that, okay, like, obviously it's stirring in my head about the coaching thing. I think about the mommy mindset makeovers, and I think about the different stresses. And then as I was looking at this particular one, I'm like, oh my gosh, this totally speaks into that space of outside of wife and mom space. Like, what are my interests? What are my dreams and those things? So I'd be talking about that. I see it like this. It's like, I've done this podcast thing for, I don't know, maybe 20 episodes. So obviously we're still young in this space, but I was reminded by probably God, because I don't think I've heard it from anywhere else, that, like, reintroduce yourself. Don't assume that people know you. And so what I do is, when I have guests on my show, specifically that have to do with the NFL, I introduce them. I ask them questions, and I ask them, just depending on the topic, I'll ask them questions that, I was thinking, like, interview yourself. So this is kind of how I see this episode, is that I am interviewing me for you. So if you've watched this podcast at all, you kind of like, I'll talk more about, hey, I used to be a part of that world, and this crazy thing happened, and this is how God got me through. And so, like, I paint a big picture, and in some spaces I'll talk about different scenarios and different situations. And like last, when I had a guest, was with Kaylin Kaler. That's where we talked specifically about the whole religious movement, religious teaching that drew my ex away from our covenant. And so I get into details about that, but I want to take this standpoint of really honing in on this whole thing of like being, a pro athlete wife. Really, I want to kind of summarize my book, because in my research, I was looking at different, spaces. So I happened to come across this podcast, and there are these younger women that are, and this may be actually a couple years old, but there is a table of younger NFL wives. And so I'm hearing this, and here, I'll be totally real, like, I'm opening this up, I'm opening up this podcast, and I'm listening, and I'm sure this is just the way it is with people, like, this is my competition. This is the podcast space that talks to NFL wives. And initially, right away, I was like, I can't enter this space. Who am I? And as I'm listening to these women, God reminded me, Eileen, you are not their competition. You are my daughter. They're my daughters. They have a niche. They have a target. You have a target. You have a niche. And so even in that, it's like God calmed me to go, you know what, Lord, you have this for me. If you've called me to this, I don't need to be intimidated. I don't need to be worried. I don't need to compare and, look for their weaknesses. And that's how the flesh works. Oh, what's wrong with that person, so that I could find a way to feel better about myself. And so as I'm listening to this, I'm just thinking, wow, okay, they're talking about the things I talk about in the book. They're being real. Cool. This is good. And as I'm listening more, I was thinking, these girls are young, like they're in that season. So even when I say that, it's not like a jab. It's like, gosh, I remember that space. I remember like those conversations or those topics. They're the same topics, but when you're stepping into the league and you're navigating through the finances and you're navigating through the relationship, talking about prenups, talking about family and all these things, it's like they're coming from the place of being in it. Their view is, it's not from a bird's eye view. And so as I was like watching it, and obviously like, God, like, how do I step into this, or what do you want me to do when it comes to what you call me to? It was like this thing of, gosh, like I have a bird's eye view of the things that they're talking about. And I'm seeing it from different lens. I mean, we're talking, reality is I'm probably 30 years older than these girls. So they're like, some of them were talking about how they're just getting married, so, or someone wasn't. And so it's like, gosh, like that is the space. And it was just a different space where I just was realizing, okay, like, good, this is awesome that they're opening these conversations and that they're having it, like in real time. And it was crazy because toward the end of it, they said, there's no sounding board for the things that we're going through. And that's what they want to create that space for. But the one thing that I've learned to understand is you always need a mentor. You always want someone who's ahead of you so that they can help you navigate through. And that's what I emphasize in my book. And so as I'm watching this, I'm like, okay, God, there's a space for me. And not that I needed it for watching that, because if God tells me I have a space for you, I have a space, period. But it was good and reassuring to know these are the very women that I want to speak to. And so, as I go through this, there's a space, there's a mothering spirit. So that for sure. There's the gone before you space. Like I've gone before these girls. I see what they're talking about. I see and have experienced what they've dealt with. And I also see that space of, whether it's a scenario where the couple stays together or whether they get a divorce, when you are young and in love and you're just starting out, you don't see ahead how things can change. Love develops and grows, praise God, for a lot of people. But in the case like mine, it's like I could have been one of those like girls speaking, going, nope, yeah, we're going to be together forever. Divorce is not an option. That was me. And that, I never would have imagined being in a space like this. Strong Christian, a very strong, outspoken Christian. Never in a million years would I have imagined that. Never in a million years when others, in the league. When this stuff came out, it was like, what? It was crazy. And so I want to step into that space of speaking to them, so that if at all possible, if a situation like mine can be avoided, that's what I want. So I'm not coming from the place of, hey, just so you know, like, probably going to end. No, you can do things to be proactive. You can just prepare for what's coming and what's ahead and get navigation. Don't go through this alone, so that you are in a good place after, so that you can navigate to and make the right steps and put the right boundaries on, so that you set yourself up for success, not failure. So in this episode, I am going to basically, which I kind of take for granted, I'm going to kind of give a breakdown of my book, because one, I can give more, in some ways, different details, because, you can't write like how you talk for the most part. I love to write in a way that the reader is there. I love to write in a way where it's like, the way that you write is like, we're on the couch right next to each other and you're talking to me. And so I'm coming from a space of, hey, I'm your friend. This is what I have to say. And this is what I went through. How do you think it applies to you? So that's my writing style. And that's really what I want to talk about, because like I said, if you haven't read the book, then you may not know some of these details that I'm going to talk about right now. So here we go. So this book is called Sidelined No More. When I went through my stuff, and when I say my stuff, when I went through the divorce, when I went through the whole situation of my ex leaving me for a religious teaching that was, polygamy, we were property, I was a Jezebel because I wore makeup, all these things. When that was going on, and, God got us through, I felt like he was saying, all right, it's time to share your story. And I'm like, cool. So me as a writer, I've always loved to write. I'm just like thinking, I'm just going to divulge everything, and I'm going to just let loose on what happened. Not even about the crappy things that happened, because there for sure were crappy things. But more like, oh, like God did this, and this spiritually happened, and like intense, crazy, scary, supernatural things. I wanted to write about these things, so I had this list of all these things I wanted to write about. And God is saying, no, not yet. I don't want you talking about that yet. And I knew very clearly that he was saying, I want you to create a space for these women, for them to see that they can trust you, for them to see that you understand them, for them to understand that you've been there and that you can sympathize, and that you were looking to me, God, so it's God talking, that you're looking to me as you're going through and navigating through this NFL wife life. So this book, Sidelined No More, it ended up turning into 10 chapters. Every other chapter has to do specifically with, NFL life. And then every other chapter, I call it a playbook strategy. So chapter 1, I talk about who am I? I talk about that transition out of my life. I was a strength coach at San Diego State. I worked with a bunch of athletes. It was super fun. I totally felt like I had purpose. I had my people. I had my friends. I had my church. My family was right here. And so I literally got on a plane in the middle of October and got married to, like the same day. So leave San Diego, fly into Green Bay, where the world is, it's like, how there's like black and white movie. It wasn't a black and white movie. It was literally a green and gold, like, world. So, just going into that. So in this chapter, I talk about that hard space of going, gosh, like, who am I now? Like, what am I meant for? I'm coming into this world where I don't know anybody. I'm, Asian, where most of the people in the community are white. At the time, I remember thinking, and I wasn't the only one, that if you saw a black person and if they were fairly fit, you just assume that they were a Packer, because I was very predominantly white. And so just stepping into that space of identity, losing my identity, like, what am I known for? What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to act? Like, do I get a job? I didn't get a job, and, I didn't actually at all, in the sense of my husband at the time. We decided, hey, like, let's focus on us. Let's focus on building a family. And so I did not get a job. And soon after, I got pregnant. And from there, it was like, hey, like, God, take it. Let's, if you want us to have kids, let's just go. And we did 8 kids. Gosh, 8 kids. So, and I'm sorry, I hesitate because that last one he never met. So that's when issues started. And I actually had to step away from the situation. We actually had to have an escape plan. So that's a whole other thing that, like I said, I don't want to get into the intense part. But because we had to have an escape plan, I had no idea that I was pregnant with number 8. So anyway, so, just this whole thing with identity, it's like I had to come to this place of understanding, like, how do you see me? And it took a while to get to that place of understanding. And I'm saying years. Like, I am looking back now and seeing how, confidently, like I said, like, okay, for like I just told you earlier, that I was watching this podcast of these young girls who are NFL wives. And initially there was a feeling of insecurity, intimidation. Oh my gosh, like these are my competition. And thankfully that space or that mindset, that thought went away quickly because I knew the truth. God was saying, hey, wait, hold on here. That's not me. That's not me talking to you. And so me at 52, I was able to snap out of it quicker. So in your mid-20s, when you're in a situation like that, when you're coming into a space of, okay, who are these women? I don't know them. I'm like Christian or not Christian. I'm scoping them out in the sense of who, like, where do I belong? Where do I fit in? So to deny or to pretend like that is not what your mindset is. Well, kudos to you. That's what you think. But I know anybody, we're always looking for a place of belonging. And so that was the mindset that I had, is like, okay, where do I fit in? Where do I belong? I found there was a couples Bible study. And so even still, like, and just me and my personality, because I'm an introvert, it took me a while to come into that space of feeling okay with where I was. So there's that chapter. I go into the relationship with your spouse. I open up the book with the story of how he wasn't, like, he never cheated. I was the one that had the very promiscuous history, his promiscuous past. He was not like that at all. He was not a cheater. But there was a situation right before we got married. Actually, it was in 2011. Right during, it was actually the day, 9/11. Because of that scenario, because of what happened, in a sense, like all hell broke loose, right? Someone came to him and was like, he was in a vulnerable state. And she was basically coming on to him. And she actually said, and here's what happened. He's trying to tell her about me. So this is a situation where he hadn't seen her in a long time. And he's telling her about me. And her response, which I believe is just the devil, the way he works. She said to him, if she really loved you, she would be here right now. And so she was, coming on to him, trying to do things that, it was just like perfect opportunity. And as things were happening, he came to his senses and he was thinking, which you have to think, or which maybe people don't realize, but this is the stuff that ran through his mind, thank God, is he was thinking, oh my gosh, is she pregnant and she's trying to pin it on me? This is the worst case scenario. These are the things that, thank God they went through his head. Is she going to pin something on me, or is she going to try to make something happen so that she can get my money, or that she can trap me? And so something came to his senses, or he came to his senses and started thinking that. And all of a sudden it was like, he snapped out of it and he was like, get out of here. And he kicked her out. And so, sexually nothing happened. I know I'm being very open here. And he talked to me that day, so obviously I'm talking about it totally emotionless, but for sure it was a hard situation. So I talk about those scenarios where you have that temptation there, even to the guys that don't want to be unfaithful. So I talk about that. I actually talk to, this is a playbook strategy, which again, when I say I'm coming into this coaching space, or I'm coming into this space when it comes to the NFL wives and speaking out about it, I cannot deny, I will always and will never deny that I'm gonna come from a space of God and co-laboring with him, seeking his face, partnering with him. So if a woman, an NFL wife doesn't, or a pro athlete wife does not like that I'm coming from that space, hey, then we're not meant to be. That's okay. But for the ones that understand, hey, God is real, then I'm always going to come from that, that point of view. And so one of the playbook strategies that I talk about in between, in every other chapter, I talk about the power of forgiveness. And this was one of those spaces where I literally had to come to terms and say, you know what, this is not about me. And I'm talking to my ex here at that time. This is not about me. This is not about you. I forgive you. God has something for us. We move forward from here. And I sounded like that when he literally told me about it. I mean, I was in tears, but that's what I said. But it took me a couple of days, to really work through the emotions of it. But it was being obedient to God and trusting that God had something bigger than the actual situation that I was able to do that. So I talk about the relationship dynamics. I talk about how to navigate through, because you're not only competing, as a pro athlete wife, you're not only competing with other women, you're competing with fans, you're competing with family, you're competing with just time, so there's a lot of things. And you're also you're the one that he goes home to. And since you're not a fan, you're the one that has to say, hey, can you spend more time with the kids? Or, hey, can you pay the bills? Or, hey, can you take out the trash? And you know what? Sometimes it's competitive in the sense that from fans and from other girls and all that, he's going to get that, oh my gosh, you're so great. And so there's a way of working through that, where I talk about how can you stay his number one fan? How do you do with the cheating? How do you navigate through being the wife, being the one that he goes home to, and it's not all the glitz and glamour at home. So I talk about that. I talk about the family challenges, the finances. When I was listening to this podcast, I'm listening to the women talk about their husbands wanting so badly to give to everything, that they're good-hearted and things like that. And it's there's a place of being good-hearted, right? I get it. You get these finances and you're like, dude, I don't deserve it. I want to help people out. I want to be there. But it's have a plan, set your boundaries so that you're not being led by everybody else's needs. You're positioning yourself to say, I want to help people out. Here's the tough questions I ask in terms of loans or different things like that. And also, if I want to give, let me give within these means, as I'm making sure to take care of my family. That's what we did. That's what we encourage. The Bible does say, leave and cleave your mother and father, and leave your mother and father, cleave to your wife. And that's a hard thing when it comes to the NFL. That is such a line of it's not easy, and I get it, but that's what God calls us to do. You can do that in a way where you're honoring your wife, you're honoring your family, you're honoring your kids, while helping others out. And so to set boundaries, that's my heart, is okay, do that, but you gotta have, you gotta set your boundaries. You gotta have your structure. You gotta have your guidelines. Or those very people who have kind hearts, who want to love up on other people, and who want to give, are the very people that are going to be resentful in the end and have nothing to show for their families. And then here's the thing. When, I've seen it over and over, you give, and then you say no, and those very people that you've helped the very people that are resentful toward you, and they're mad at you because the spout, the spigot, is now shut off. And so to be able to navigate through that and family expectations, all that stuff, mother-in-law situations, all those things are super real. And again, without God, I couldn't make it. I probably couldn't have made it to marriage because I was accused of a gold digger. So my ex-mother-in-law, she is in heaven now. And so even when I talk about this, it's with all due respect, and there's no bashing her. It's totally understanding the place of being a mother to someone in pro sports, understanding the struggle to leave and cleave, which as I talk about in the book, because any mom is going to go through it in and outside of NFL. There's a point where I have 7 boys and a girl, and there's a point where I'm going to have to let go of my boys, and that will not be easy. I'm praying for that, and I know, thank God, that I have, because of the right mindset and because of the Bible and knowing what God says. I look at it as gaining 7 daughters, because I only have 1. So I'm looking in a way of that it's not going to be an intimidating relationship or a replacement of it's an addition. I really have to say quickly. So I had one, this just happened last week. I had one of my kids just had some friends over, girls and guys. And so this kid is 15. So it's a bunch of freshmen at my house. And they're in the kitchen and they're eating, and I'm in this side room. And one by one, my other boys come in. So he's, I've got a bunch of freshmen in my kitchen. Then my 20-year-old walks in, and I'm looking at their eyes. And then my 18-year-old walks in. Then my 16-year-old walks in. And even my 13-year-old, who is getting calls from girls. All of a sudden, I'm just thinking, okay, this is new. And it was I always knew, I've got some great looking dudes, and I literally say, hey, go model, do something, make some money with how good looking they are. But I saw it in a whole different way, where I was thinking, all right, I am really, my head was on a swivel in a good way. It was just I was giggling. I was literally talking to my 15-year-old who saw it too afterwards. We're oh my gosh. He's yeah, they were squealing as each boy walked in. And then I'm thinking, man, when my daughter brings her girlfriends over, they're going to have those same reactions. And then I'm thinking of the dude that comes to see my daughter, and he is going to be totally intimidated because he's going to have 7 boys. Well, they're not going to be around all of them, but that's, they better guard their sister. So just all these things. But anyways, going back to, the mother-in-law thing, like I said, I totally get it. But to help these younger women navigate through it from the lens that I have now, I just think that it would be such a place of understanding. I know for me with the mother-in-law stories, I'm going to save those stories, but I will say that it wasn't easy to navigate through to, even the way that we got married. We didn't have a big wedding because things weren't right, in the sense of just having their blessings, and we wanted to be obedient to God. So we got married right away in the middle of October, hoping to have a bigger wedding. That just never happened, and all these things. So I do talk about relationship dynamics, not only with a mother-in-law, but that's a huge part of it. But again, putting boundaries with families, understanding your role as stewards for God's finances. So I talk about that in another chapter. I talk about my own shopping addiction. So I used it as a place of numbing. Actually, here, so hopefully you'll get my book so that you can read more of the stories. But I don't own a Louis Vuitton, and I would like to. Well, no, not that I'd like to. Not worth it to me, I guess. Now, if I saw one that was super cute, and it's not that even, I just don't have anywhere to go. Let's put it that way. So I am not knocking you if you have one. If I used it, I would probably get one. But this is how I was back then. When I was an NFL wife. I was in my mid-20s. I was judgmental in the sense of like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to spend that much money on a purse. Like, how dare they? Or, like they're wasteful, or, I never probably said it out loud, but I thought it in my head. And so I never bought a purse that was thousands of dollars. But I would look for, so before I was married, person maybe, a Dooney and Burke purse, one of those. And so they were like a couple hundred. And I would always look for sales. And so what I would do is I would justify, well, I'm not buying a purse for thousands and thousands of dollars, but let me buy a lot of purses for hundreds of dollars. That's really what it turned out to be, is that I would not get high price items, but I would get a lot of lower ticket items. And I would spend hours looking for deals and discounts and flash sales and all these things. And so I would consume my time in order to have a deal or to, pay less for something, which pretty much, like everything else, like collected dust on the shelf of my closet. So I will have to say, if I didn't have a daughter, I would have gotten rid of these purses a long time ago, because there's no need for them. But you know how the world is, and you know how like things come back into style. So I'm keeping these things for my daughter. That's really like the only thing that, like some, of course I'm using some, but there's tons and tons that I did give away to friends, but tons that I still have. And so, like I said, like I'm just going to keep them for my daughter. And so in that, as I talk about my shopping addiction, I talk about why. I talk about the root. I talk about the root of addictions. And I talk about how, for me, I numbed pain of loneliness. I numbed the pain of a lack of purpose. I knew I was a mom, obviously, like, I had so many, and I loved it. But there were definitely times where I was like, gosh, like God knows that he created me. Like I love ministering to women. I love encouraging women, helping people out, specifically women. It probably came from the heart of the fact that like I didn't know my value growing up. And so I brought up, the fact that I was like, that promiscuity thing came from the fact that I didn't know my value. And I saw how I was a naive college girl who showed parts and dressed a certain way and was flattered by these guys who literally looked at me as an object. And so my heart goes out to young women that don't see that. And then now, like just in the different phases of life, going before someone and looking at them going, oh man, like I see what you don't see yet. I want to help you. Oh my gosh, like, can I share with you? I didn't have a lot of that. Even in the NFL, I had some, and I'm thankful for it. But when it came down to this whole thing of like navigating through after, the way that it works, and it's nobody's fault, but when you're done with a league, we happen to live in Green Bay. We stayed in Green Bay for a long time, but there's seasons of relationship. And so you lose touch with the people that you know. And, we had chaplains and, their wives who tried to help out as best they could. But in my situation, 7 years after we're done, and having someone understand what I was going through in the midst of that stuff, that was so hard to find. So I went through a lot of it by myself and God. And this is why I know that I'm called to this space, is because, like I said, I had support as much as I could, but so many of the situations and the dynamics was like, just God speaking directly to me, or God using someone that wasn't involved in pro sports, help me come alongside me in a different way. So it was like, I'm like, just getting help with all these different things in these different directions. But it's like God is consolidating that to me. So now I can help people, wives, in the way that God helped me. That's what I want to do. That's what my heart is. And so, just going back to the whole thing of purpose, I want to help women navigate through with that. And then lastly, in those 5 main chapters, I talk about being better together. I talk about the transition out of the game. I talk very compassionately on the idea that these men, there's not a space, an open space to grieve and work through transitioning out. It's like, generally speaking, and again, this is not just for the guys, but just the girls. There's such stereotypes out there that people just don't understand. And, why would they, or how could they? But when it comes to the guys, I think the generalization is, okay, long career or short career, most of them have short careers. You get done, you go into coaching, you go into broadcasting, you're fine. Right? So everybody thinks, oh, you're financially set, or, it's not a big deal. But understand, for a guy who's played, if he's played a long time in the league, and then you add on all the years or decades before that where they're starting young, they're playing football is all they know. To leave the game for good is super hard. And no one, well, at least I've seen, generally speaking, there's not a space for these guys to mourn and to grieve and go, okay, I don't know how to go back to like normal living. And this doesn't even, I'm not even talking about injuries, CTE. I'm not even talking about other things. I'm talking about a healthy guy that gets out of the league and he is navigating through going into civilian life. So anyways, so I talk about all those spaces, and I talk about the fact that we're better together. When I say better together, I'm talking about I had mentioned this earlier that, when you're done, right? And so for me, like I said, it's been a couple decades. Most of the wives, understandably so, that, when we talk about these things, or women that were in my era that read my book, they'll say, oh my gosh, you nailed it. Yes, you understand me. There's those women who go, oh my gosh, yep, people just don't understand, but yes, you got it right. They've moved on. We all have grown children, or we're working in those spaces of college kids and the next generation. And so they may not have it on their heart to help these younger women. For some reason, God put it in my heart too. And so here they read the book. They're like, yeah, this is very, this is good. Totally resonates with me. But there's nothing in them, very few of them, that think, oh my gosh, I want to help the younger ones. Again, I'm not at all bashing. That's just not what they're called to do. They're moving on. So I want this book to get into the hands of the ones that are in it, or that are just out of it. I got some reviews from these women that are more younger, probably good 15, 20 years younger than I am. And so, they've given reviews, or they've called me and they've said, oh my gosh, I was suffering in silence. No one could understand, not even my good friends, but man, you understand me. The feeling and relief of feeling of being understood, and knowing that you're not alone. And seeing, oh my gosh, this person has gone before me. She's been there. I can talk to her. That's a great feeling to have when you have that. And so again, that's what I want. I want this book. I want this coaching space. That's what I want it to be about. And so we're better together. And what I'm being real and raw. Big vision is, I want, the way that I look at these women, someone like me, is you have a small window of opportunity to make big impact, and to make that small opportunity a big one, or the small time frame to be big. I think about these women and I think, gosh, with a God mindset, and let me be more specific, with a kingdom mindset, which that's what I'm gonna approach in that way when I say the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God mindset, where you're a daughter of God. That in itself, and when you think of yourself as a citizen of the kingdom, that in itself should, or will, when you learn about it, change everything, change your whole mindset. It will I could say this much. I live in such a place of peace, knowing who I am in Christ, just provision, like with the future. When the Proverbs 31 says, like, she laughs, there's a scripture that says she laughs at the days to come. I didn't understand that. But knowing who I am in Christ and knowing how he is my father, he's my provider, he's my peace, he's my counselor. Like when I'm saying like God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, knowing that I have all that in him, it changes the way I look at life. It changes the way that I look at my purpose. Like everything changes with that mindset. And so that's where I'm going to come from when I talk to these women, when God brings these people who he wants to bring to me. That's my heart. And so, like I said, like, big vision is to raise up these women to really make impact. Because I would say, I know for me during the time, okay, yeah, I did things. I led Bible study and, stuff like that. But I never looked at myself as an impact maker or like a gift. And so when I say that, I refer to like, okay, as a Christian, we are encouraged to tithe, to give back. And I know that we always did. And the way that we did that was we would give, we would tithe, we would like give offerings, we would like help other things through a foundation. But never did I think of myself as a gift. And so this whole concept of, you know what, Eileen, you have the means, invest in yourself. This is after I was, my single life. So within the last 7 years, invest in you. Like I never would have thought to do that. Wait, spend money on me? Like here I'm thinking, okay, so I spent lots of money on clothing, right? And I knew I struggled with that, but it's a whole different space. But to spend money on learning a skill set or nurturing and improving my own skill set, what? Like no way, And so for me to hear God and him say, Eileen, you're as much of a gift, if not more. You invest in you, you're giving to other people. So investing in like learning about writing, learning about authorship, investing in the speaker's world, even this whole podcast stuff, like these are investments that I'm making in myself so that I can give back with my stories, with my testimonies, with my encouragement, with godly wisdom that God has given me, with all these experiences, with just hope, like God is doing all this and using all this in me to help you or whoever, and so that's what I want these women to see is like, you have a gift way beyond what you realize. And let's not lose sight of that. Let's nurture it. Let's not feel bad about it. And so let's keep it in this place. So it's like you can dream and pursue those things that God is calling you to without denying your family, without like losing yourself or losing your spouse or losing your kids. And so that place is the place I'm stepping into. So as we wind down, I'm thinking, we'll try it. Let's see. We'll just say it. So I've got this mindset acronym, right? I'm going to just go through it quickly. And then I'm hoping that I can refer to all the things I talked about earlier. This one will be super quicker than those other ones in previous episodes. So M, make God your first priority. Seek first his kingdom, his glory, and all things will be added. When you start there. And if you don't know what it means to start there, I didn't really, I thought I did, but when you start there, and if you stick with me, whether through podcast or if you are an NFL person or a pro athlete, wife, girlfriend, if you're watching this, please, I'm asking you to reach out to me because I want to help you navigate through. I know you won't regret it. So seek him first and everything else will be added. So again, do that, learn how to do that, and just understanding that that's a promise of God, that when you seek him first, when you delight in him, he'll give you the desires of your heart. When you start puzzling and connecting the dots of his word and his promises, that in itself will lead you to a place of peace and rest. Inner healing. Again, this is going to be part of my coaching. I know, and it hasn't stopped, getting healed. It's how people call it deliverance. I know for me, there was different phases, different processes. Life Skills International, I told you about that. I've referred to that before. That was a 6-month course, which I've been involved for years. That is a lot of pieces of healing, inner healing. I'm even going through it now, different ways where my previous marriage was hurting my marriage now, and going through those things. So I'm still working through those. So inner healing is big. And so again, this is part of what I plan to do to help these women. So I just put exploring deliverance and help find programs to bring healing and wholeness to different areas of your life. And nurture your gifts. All right. So again, I was thinking about that, like that podcast that I was watching earlier. There's seasons. There's the women who are just getting it, and so that's like they have to set aside their career, or just like I did, set aside everything and step into this space of support. And, like it is a phase in the sense that depending on what your job is, as much as you even like think, okay, I want to do my own thing, I want to have a job, because of the dynamics of pro sports and getting cut, injured, traded, whatever, it's really hard. You're kind of, it's just, there's so many variables, and it makes it like this target, it's a moving target. So very few women, when they step into that space, have their own careers and have different things. So it's definitely a season of setting aside your dreams, or like, see, this is what I'm talking about it. They're in a sense on pause or on hold, but nurture them. And it is also like, so for me, okay, so at the time, so I know I like what I'm doing now, I can't even imagine. There's no way I could do a podcast, right? Speak all that stuff. I'm just even stepping into it. But back then, during baby season, no way. Now, here's how I nurtured those things. I did Bible study. So I nurtured that heart in me to, like the Bible refers it to this. There's context in this. Okay, I'm not old, and I wasn't even old then. So I'm older, but when I was in the NFL, I wasn't old, but there's a scripture that says, have the older women to teach the younger women how to love their husbands and love their families. And I've always had that nudge and that heart within me. So even though I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, I was still nurturing that heart to love up on women. So, doing Bible studies, like helping the younger women that were, newer in the league, or, having a compassion for the girlfriends, because it's just there's a different dynamics there. Having compassion on them so that they feel like they belong. Like that was those nurturing spaces, writing, journaling, doing those things. So whatever gifts and skill sets you have, find a way, ask God to not totally put it on the shelf and to think that they're bad things. Find a way to nurture those skills. All right, dream big. Again, like it's easier said than done, as I'm in the space that I'm in now. My kids are all in school, but take opportunity to dream big. Like get a journal or a notebook, and just know no one is looking at this page. No one's looking over my shoulder. So what dreams do I have? So don't feel bad. So take the opportunity to dream big, so that you can also see that as you're dreaming, I know this much, like when I look at my dream big list, I see, wow, there's a consistency. So I've done it a couple times, but even before, when I didn't do it, like I didn't do it in the NFL days, but I look at my dream big list now and I go, wow, that experience and that season was in preparation for this season. Whoa, look at back then. These are the things I went through. These are experiences that I've gone through, and these are the accomplishments or the different trials that I got through that helped me in this point. So to have dream big sessions and, just go, okay, God, like these are things I want to do. These are things I've always wanted to do. Lord, show me how that looks. Let me give you an example. Okay, so out of college, I told you, like I worked at San Diego State, loved being a strength coach. And then as I got saved, when I came to Christ, I became like a spiritual strength coach. And then, so I'd help people out, bring people to church. I did Bible study with the girls. So it carries over to the NFL. So I, love doing that. I loved being part of the Bible study. And then, outside of NFL, it was just doing different things and joining life skills where I was a facilitator. Sorry, I'm talking fast. I see the time. So I was a facilitator and just loved helping women. And there was a point where, in my heart, and when I was married to my NFL spouse, I remember praying and going, God, I'd love to be a chaplain. I'd love to be I'd love for me, and because that's what we did. Like, we ministered to people and encouraged players, we would take them to that. If you're NFL, this is called professional athletes outreach. And so it's PAO, is just something that they did after the season for NFL couples. And so we did that. We brought people there. Like, I love that. I love that at that time. Like, that was one thing I did with my spouse. And so we had that in common. We did that. And of course, things happen, right? And I remember thinking, God, that was a dream I had. Actually, I know exactly when I knew that wasn't going to happen. Yeah, there was a situation where I just felt like, that's not going to happen. Yeah, just a lot of different things, but obviously getting divorced and all that stuff, it was that solidified that wasn't going to happen in that capacity. However, that dream that I've had to help women and in this space, it's like it's happening again. That dream and that compassion and passion has never left. And he's bringing it back to me, and it's coming in a different way than I thought. And so God sees those things. So dream big, pray big. Skill sets, invest in yourself, your mind, your future. I totally talked about that before. So not just schooling, if schooling helps, going back to school, but I think to really hone in on and seeking God on your purpose and looking for, courses or programs or something that can really get you honed in on your skill set. That is cool. That is definitely something that I want to encourage you in, be a part of, and help you feel the freedom and the excitement to go, oh my gosh, if I do spend money in doing this, it's more than okay. It's an investment in yourself. Establish community. This is where I do this podcast. This is where, again, read my books. So like I said, Sidelined No More, that's for pro athlete wives. If you're not a pro athlete wife and you're listening to this, there's Rise Up Lady Bellator. Rise Up Lady Bellator comes with a PDF workbook. I highly encourage you to get in a group of women and go through that together. I know that there's been people who have asked me about before I got the workbook, they're like, oh my gosh, I want to do a study with a group of women. Go for it. Do it. We're better together. Guys, for us to keep hidden under a lamp, this is the stories of encouragement that we may have, or to keep to ourselves the things that we're struggling with. It says, confess your sins, confess your struggles, your issues with one another so that you may be healed. So being better together, establishing community is huge. And like I said, if I didn't finish it, let me finish it now. Big vision is for me to establish what I call Lady Bellators. She's a daughter of the King. She's a bride of Christ. She's married to by God. There's the contending matriarch and the contending one for her family. So she fights for her family. She fights spiritually for her family, not against her family, but spiritually for her family. And then she's an impact maker. So those are the 4 pillars of a Lady Bellator that's part of this community. So for you guys to get to this place of going, yep, I'm her. I know who I am in Christ. That, being the bride of Christ, I understand that. There's, just all those things, understanding that you're a contender for your family and then an impact maker, understanding that, knowing that, oh my gosh, more so, that community is going to be one of women uniting and encouraging each other and cheering each other on rather than being intimidated by each other or comparing or just getting distracted by the things that really don't matter, which I know that I did when, in the league, just different focuses. Not that I was like ever fighting with anybody, but different focuses on like major emphasis on like looks and how to dress and how stressed I was, going to big events and things like that. Okay. And then T, tend to yourself, whatever stage you're at. Don't neglect yourself. I know, and I'm going to say this especially again to these, NFL wives, these pro athlete wives, get help and don't feel bad. I know for me, like, because, you're a stay-at-home mom and because you don't have a job, you feel that like, how can I contribute? So I know for me, so I'll just speak for myself, like it was like, okay, how can I contribute? Well, I'm going to have babies, right? And also like I have to, I'm the one that is in charge of the home. So initially we lived in a, small, 2-bedroom duplex, cleaning with a couple kids. No, one kid, wasn't that bad. But then we moved into a big home with more kids. And I found that I was spending all my days, all my hours cleaning the house, cooking, doing laundry. And this was just like half the kids that I have now. And feeling bad, like, when we had that conversation where it was like, hey, should we get a cleaning lady? I'm like, no, that's my job. Or a babysitter. Or even now I have a nanny, well, I don't well, she lives here. She lives here, but I mean, when I think nanny, they're not young, but no, she helps me a lot. And so like, it's okay. It's okay to say, you know what, if I can relinquish a job to someone else, so that I have more time for a relationship or, nurturing my skill set or whatever, like, it's okay. Like, don't feel bad. Tend to you. Get what you need. If you need a break, get a babysitter. If you need, whatever help you need, get it. So, okay. Hope you watch this in parts or that you're, listening in the car or whatever, because this one's a long one with just me. Sorry. Okay. M, make God a priority. Seek his kingdom first and everything else will be added. I, inner healing, explore deliverance, and just get healing for yourself. And nurture your gifts. Okay, write down what you excel in, feed your creativity, just don't put it on the shelf. D, dream big now. Keep it there. Keep praying over it. Ask God how you can use those things in the moment, in the present, even if it looks different, at that time. S, skill sets. So again, you nurture your gifts, but then you also invest in those skill sets that'll make you better in those things that you're gifted in. Or it may be something that that you need that, you just don't know anything about. I mean, for me, when it comes to, for me speaking, podcasts, I knew nothing about. I never thought I'd do this. And so getting help with these areas, investing in certain things so that I get better. Hey, this is for you. That fulfills you. It also helps you to live out your calling, and your family is going to see it. And it's not, when you keep priorities straight and when they see that you're there for them, you can do these things and you're inspiring them. I'm inspiring my daughter, like in writing, she sees that I write, so she starts creating stories. Or when my kids see that, hey, mom's a tough cookie. These are things that I hope that they can look for in their future spouses. Okay. E, establish community. You're not meant to do life alone. And then last, T, tend to you. What fills your cup? Ask yourself that question. And then add joy, personal care, spiritual renewal into your routine. Tend to you. Get help if you need it. I am so excited for what is in store for the future. Even as I read this, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I can't wait for God to bring these women to me, so that we together can be leaders. Oh, I keep missing it or forgetting this. Big vision is not only NFL. Big vision is to raise up women who can be mothers to the ones that come after them, so that we can make big impact, not only in our gifts and skill sets, but so that we can like grow our finances, and that we can, like, I know that there's so many women outside of pro sports that God is bringing to me that need help financially. They're going through, divorce situations or situations where they don't have funds that we do. And so I just want to help them. So I want it to be a place of help, full circle. So, all right, this was long. I hope this helped. This is what I'm asking you to do. If you're a pro athlete wife, or if you're done, please share this, subscribe to my YouTube, or subscribe to the Unsidelined Life. If you're on YouTube, please make just put a comment below. Or if you're on Apple Podcasting, you can leave a review. Those help to get this word spread out. Those things, comments, reviews, tell me what you want me to talk about. Get those out, and that will help spread this podcast. Also, again, if you're a pro athlete wife, like I said, share, but please get a hold of me. I would love to even have like a 10-15 minute conversation to see what your needs are, or to see how I can help. So maybe you are done and maybe you don't need help, but I want to pick people's brains to see how can I help, what would help a woman going through it now or just getting done. So I'd love to talk to you. Hello at Lady Bellator. Please reach out. And I am done for this week. See you later.
Until next time, love well, celebrate your strength, and discover the new things you are capable of. You are a light in the lives of those around you, and no night is too dark for you to find your way.